Today we are building one of these growth chart wooden rulers. I've seen them made out of cloth. I've seen them made out of vinyl stick-on that you put up on the wall. But this is a freaking woodworking channel, so I'm building it out of a piece of wood. Grab yourself a 1x6x6 or by 8. They're cheaper. Economics. I don't get it. A regular sized pencil and a tape measure. Disclaimer, I'm marking my project out in inches. You can copy the design by using the metric system. I wish we used the metric system. It seems like the math is so much easier. However, if I started driving my car down the wrong side of the road, I'm gonna get hit. I'll be cutting out and showing you how to build the jig so that you could use your router to cut the grooves for all of the markings. If you don't have a router, you find them a little scary because they do spin pretty fast. What you could do, set out your ruler. You're gonna follow all the same markings I'm doing with the router. Let's say 22 inches. That is centered 22. You're going to go an 1/8 inch above and an 1/8 inch below. You're going to go in however far we're supposed to be going in. 1/8 inch above, 1/8 inch below. You'll also want to sand your project now because this is going to get painted. I'm going to put some tape on it. So sand your project. Put down a piece of tape on that top line. On the bottom line. Whoa, not that much. Yeah, let's just say we were going the 3-inch mark. We mark them out at 1 inch, 2 inch, and 3 inch. This would be the farthest in line if you were marking it to the 2 inch or the 1 inch. And then you would just paint this line. If you want to make it a little skinnier, 1/16 of an inch, I think this is a good bolded line because you can see it from farther away. Again, the one end of my board is starting to turn into a candy cane on its own. This end, it's got some booger marks. I'm going to end up routing out and rounding over these edges, so this isn't important to me. However, I do have some knots coming through. If I put my markings on this side, I'm going to start running into knots. I don't want it to blow out or chip out or look gross. So, what I'm going to do is actually start at this end of the board and work my way down that way, and I know that's going to be the top of the board where I end at. With the tape measure on the board, you would think that this is just a normal, just mega size ruler, but you would be incorrect. Most of the boards that I see for these, they actually start at the 6-inch mark. They don't start at 0, and that's just to avoid any trim or any boards or pieces, anything on the floor of the person's home, because they're going to hang this on the wall. So that way they don't have to try to work around the trim, with it being at 0, and then the height being incorrect for the kid. 6 feet down, I'm going to go 6 inches up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to switch over to a Sharpie so maybe you guys can actually see and read what I'm writing on here. Yeah, better? Okay. Now we're going to go in 1-inch increments up the line. So starting at ground 0, the 3, 6, and 9 inch are going to be 2 inches cut into the board. Everything else is going to be a 1 inch except for the 1 foot markings. Those are going to be 3 inches in. Let me show you what I mean by all of that. And it's a great idea to put your markings down far enough so they'll hit the 1-inch mark on your square, since that's majority of your lines. I'm just going to redo all of these. And here we have the generic layout for the rest of our ruler. It's going to be 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch will go up 2 inches, 4, 5, 6 inches, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 being 3. So this line is 3 inches into the board. 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. The rest of them will just be a 1-inch line. And you're just going to repeat that process all the way up the board. I had to make a few adjustments to mine because as I started moving up the board, I started thinking about penguins and how many teeth are in their mouths and how they're not really that cute of an animal. So to start out on the board at the bottom, you're starting at the 6-inch mark, not 0. You're not starting at 0 moving to 12. You're starting at 6 inches, going 9 and then 12, because you have, you know, your base boards and everything down here. So at 6 inches, then 9, 12. To get these lined out pretty quick, you're going to set this little beauty to the 1-inch mark and go 1 inch, 1, skip, 1, 2, skip, 1, 2, skip, 1, 2, skip, 1, 2, skip. And you're going to move all the way up your board. Then you're going to come back through. Again, remember that your line starts at 12 right here. So this one is a 2-inch. This one is a 3-inch. Once you get past this little beautiful mess, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, skip, 1, 2, 3, skip, 1, 2, 3, skip. 2 inch all the way up, and then the remaining lines should be your 3 inch. And we can start at the 6 inch mark, because even if you bring that newborn baby home first day and you smack him or her up against the board, they're going to be taller than 6 inches. The shortest baby ever born was 8 inches, so she's even on this ruler. And unless you're setting world records, your baby will too. To create the depth jig, I found 2 pieces of scrap wood. These are 1 3/8 inches wide. The width truly doesn't matter. You'll need 2 pieces for each side of your router. I cut them to 14 inches long. Hold them in place against the router. This is trickier with a round base. Cut the 2 pieces equal to the router base's width, plus your 2 boards on each side. Mine came out to 6 7/8. Do a dollop of not daisy, but wood glue. Make sure everything is square and nail the first corner together. Repeat on the second corner. I sandwiched my router in between to get a tight fit. This also minimizes movement and will keep those router grooves nice and straight. Flip it around and repeat for the other side. This jig can be used whenever you want to keep your router in a straight 90-degree line, to cut grooves, a keyhole slot, a wide variety of different applications. And if your router fits like a glove that's just slightly too small, you can use a little sandpaper to widen the gap. My jig is a little long in case I wanted to go with a 1x8 or 10, heck, maybe even a 1x12 in here. The jig also features the bracing underneath the 2 tracks, and this is so it's easier to get things lined up. It helps support everything on the table so it's not kind of cattywampus when I'm trying to use my router and focus on something else. And also, it helps prevent blowout. So when I'm running my router, I pop it in here and I go back and forth across the very edge of my board. It gives it something to help push the fibers up against there to prevent them from exploding out towards me. And I've seen these jigs have pieces that are labeled 1, 2, 3 inches so that they're interchangeable in the back. I'm not going to do that because this jig isn't specifically made for this purpose. It's actually built to keep my router 90 degrees from whatever I put it up against. So as I put my router in here like this, I'm going to measure it in or kind of just eyeball it to 3 inches, put my stop, set it, put a clamp, and that prevents my router from moving any farther than I want it to. And that's the basic gist of my jig. I am using a 1/4 inch flush cut bit, nothing fancy, no bearings. I'm going to set it so that it's about an 1/8 inch down from the start point. I don't need it to go very far into this board. And like I said, I'm going to set, if this one was 3, it's going to go to right about here. I'm going to set this board, make a mark, and honestly, once I had the 3 inch mark, if I measured down 1 inch, you could set the other marks. Then take a little time and cut out all these grooves. That same method I used to draw the lines onto the board, I'm using to router the board. So I'm going through with all of my 1 inch lines, then readjusting to the 2 inch line, and readjusting one more time to finish off the 3 inch lines. I would make this board longer. Longer because it's going to give you more space so that you can't make a cattywampus. And also, I found myself while doing the 3 inch lines, I had to clamp it down because I got a little scared, because wherever the router wants to go, this is following it, okay? It's not going to stay in place on its own. You can see I was kind of holding it in place. This was clamped down to get my lines. Once I got to the 3 inch lines, I didn't want it to be wavy or silly looking, so I would clamp this piece down as well. I would just make this board a little longer, and then I could put a clamp against this board and here, and that stops it from wandering or moving. It'll be in the plans. Now I'm going to cut the board to length and give it a good sanding. Don't spend too much time on that sanding step because we are revisiting the sander here in just a moment. Right now, I'm going to take a little black acrylic paint. I'm going to paint inside each of these grooves, again, to kind of make them stand out from a distance. If you wanted to paint them blue or pink, if you wanted to gender match them, I'm just going with good old black because I'd like the lettering to be black, but you do you. And you get a little on the top, that's all right, because we're going to revisit the sander in a moment. And before I smack some stain down, I'm going to just use a cheapy stencil set, throw the numbers on there so we know how tall this child is as they grow up. I just use a 1 inch little tick mark in to find out where to gauge these so, you know, they don't end up crooked. It's up to you guys. And then I'm going to just stencil them on. I'm going to use a paint pen whenever I find out where one of those are at. I'm still on the fence. I don't really think I like the numbers being perfectly in line with the 3-inch spot. I kind of want them to be right above. I like them right above. I'm not going to like them if they're perfectly in line. I think being right above is perfect. Below, no way. Stencil them on, use a paint pen, something to get these letters in place. She looks pretty much done. Smack some stain, using a natural Minwax. I don't want the wood to be too bright or, you know, to be a darker stain color, so it's going to take away from all the black going on the front. If you wanted to paint one of these, I'd still follow the same method. I would cut these out, paint them, sand it, and then meticulously paint around each one of those, and then stencil and paint on your lettering. I think that would work. You could go with a lighter color indent, darker color stain, maybe like white and white. That could be kind of cool. Make it your own. If you guys wanted to add in a little spot, little recess space, you could put a Sharpie in the top so you guys could mark and not lose your Sharpie. That's a cool idea I've seen. Issue I have with that is if it got bumped, obviously you've got a little one running around, and that falls on the ground. You've got just unlimited canvas space on the walls, so I wouldn't put a marker spot on the top. She's done. I'm done. The video's done. Build one. Build something else.